All right, many of you are wanting to know about the corruption of the Biden crime family. Is there really something there? Did they get entangled in foreign dealings? Or is this all Donald Trump propaganda to make the Bidens look bad or make Joe Biden look bad or his son look bad? We're going to get to the truth on a lot of corruption within the United States. And to do that, I have best-selling author Peter Schweizer with me today. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so um, let me give some background to people that are maybe new to you. Peter is an investigative journalist with decades of experience researching political and economic topics as well as corruption. He's written about corrupt Republicans. He's written about the Clintons, the Obamas, and also the Bidens. Peter, the first thing that I want you to help my audience understand is I don't think people understand the level of corruption with the Biden family. I'm seeing so much in the news, and yet the mainstream media then tries to counteract that news or justify it or excuse it. What are some of the corruption entanglements that you've seen as Hunter Biden is right now wrapping up his testimony before Congress?
Yeah, I think the first thing people need to recognize is that when it comes to corruption and bribery in a criminal sense in the United States, you don't have to show that a politician themselves gets paid. If a family member gets paid, that's enough. So one of the defenses you oftentimes hear is, well, Joe Biden didn't get paid or Joe Biden didn't get paid a lot of money. That's irrelevant. His family took in tens of millions of dollars from Chinese businesses. They do not have a discernible business in which they were providing any service, legitimate business service or product in return. And then the question becomes is why were those entities sending the Biden family money? And did they get something in return? I think it's ludicrous to suggest that Chinese officials are sending somebody money and never getting anything in return, and they keep sending them money. So the question is, what were they getting? And we don't know completely. Was it access? Was it favorable policy decisions? We don't know. But I would always look at that question of what the Biden business is. There is nothing underlining it. You can look at somebody like Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York, who's more on the liberal side. He was a businessman, but he actually had an underlining media company called Bloomberg. You could look at Republicans like Jared Kushner, who's, of course, the son-in-law of Donald Trump. He actually has a real estate business that existed long before he went into politics. You can criticize those decisions that they're making. You can criticize deals that they're getting. But what makes the Bidens completely different than anyone else is there's no business there. There's literally no business there. And in Hunter Biden's testimony before the committee, that was abundantly clear because he could never explain what he was actually getting paid to do.
Yeah, the one that stood out to me with this Russia-Ukraine war being like one of the biggest stories in the news for the last 2 years is Hunter said that he was hired and given an $80,000 a month salary to keep Russia at bay. Like to keep so I'm like, okay, was Burisma Energy at war with Russia? Were they competing? Like, I guess I don't understand how somebody with zero experience running a big business, especially an energy company, somehow gets more money per month than the average American makes working, 50 plus weeks a year. Do you understand what he means when he says it was to keep Russia at bay?
Well, here's how absurd that statement is. The founder of Burisma, Zelensky, who was paying Hunter Biden this money, was the minister in the pro-Russian Ukrainian government around 2010. That's how he formed Burisma. So Zelensky is not this Ukrainian patriot that wants to resist Russians. He was actually a collaborator with the Russians. And of course, at the same time, Hunter's getting paid by Burisma, apparently, as you say, for resisting Russia. He was also taking in $3.5 million from Yelena Baturina, a Russian oligarch who is pro-Putin. So yeah, these explanations are absurd. What they're really counting on, the Bidens, I would argue, is the ignorance of the media in actually exploring who these people are that were sending them money, and hoping that enough people will rally to support their claims. The problem is the public opinion on this has so shifted against them, and I think it's based on the evidence that we've been putting out since 2018. If you look at every survey now, the Harvard-Harris poll, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, when asked, did Joe Biden engage in illegal or highly corrupt behavior to aid his family's businesses, the minimum response is you get 65% of the people saying yes. So these explanations may fly with the mainstream media. They're certainly not flying with the American people, and I think rightfully so. Anytime somebody in Washington, Republican or Democrat, is getting free money, especially from foreign sources, you ought to be really, really suspicious about it, because these people sending the money are not stupid. They're expecting and getting something in return.
Yeah. Peter, I just wish that, like 50 or 51 former intelligence people would get together and just put out a letter with the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of Donald Trump, in the last 2 days, he has hinted that his campaign has got wind that Hillary Clinton might be secretly preparing to run. Certainly, Bill Clinton and Hillary were just hired to do consulting for Biden and Harris on how to win the upcoming election. Some say that this is, just covering up for what's coming. You did research in your book, the Clinton cash. What are some of the things about the Clintons that maybe my audience wouldn't know about?
Well, I mean, the Clintons, in my opinion, sort of were the first ones to globalize corruption. When we think of corruption in the United States among politicians, you tend to think of, some congressman who's trying to get a road paving contract for his cousin, or a lobbyist from a labor union or a large corporation funneling money to a politician. What the Clintons did when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, our chief diplomat, was rake in foreign cash from foreign entities, the various people she was negotiating with. So Bill Clinton, who had been giving speeches for about $200,000 a pop, once she became Secretary of State, Bill Clinton's speaking fees went up to $750,000 a pop. Yeah, literally for a 20-minute speech. And he was going to places like Russia and China. And look, these were access plays. You can't tell me Bill Clinton was now suddenly, 3 times more articulate than he was when his wife was not Secretary of State. So they were the first ones that really did this. The other thing that a lot of people will find surprising, contrary to their rhetoric today, is how intertwined they were actually with Russia. The amount of money they were getting from Putin's Russia in terms of speaking fees, the decisions that she was making as Secretary of State that helped Russia. There was a project called Skolkovo in Russia. I write about it. You can Google my name and Skolkovo online and find Wall Street Journal reporting on this and others. The point is that they were the first ones that profited massively from international global corruption. And I always put that in a worse category, because it's one thing if you've got, some corrupt guy who's trying to line his pockets in the country buying politicians. It's another thing if our foreign adversaries like Russia and China are doing it. And that's where we are today. So the Clintons perfected it. It would not surprise me if they're trying to position Hillary to run for president. But honestly, I think the American people are kind of past this. They're looking for fresh faces, fresh voices. I think that the Democrats would do much better trying to find a governor, whether it's Whitmer in Michigan or somebody else to run. I think that would put them in a stronger position than going back in history and plucking out Hillary Clinton as their replacement candidate.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. Yesterday, I read in the Wall Street Journal that Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has gone too far. There's all these business owners that are now saying, we're never going to do business in New York. You've shown your hand that you'll come after us Political leanings matter more than running a solid business that employs people, keeps the economy running. But the Wall Street Journal said that her biggest mistake was going after Trump in order to get elected, and that she's now fining him nearly $500 million for a victimless crime. So there is no victim. No bank was defrauded. No bank lost interest payments. No bankruptcy. What are your thoughts on Letitia James? Because the Wall Street Journal also hinted that she may be extracting money from the Trump family to give to Democrat voting unions in order to keep Democrats in power. And so it's this vicious cycle, but now they're using Trump's money in order to keep perpetuating that vicious cycle. What are your thoughts on the Letitia James situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you look at official actions that can go for Democrats or Republicans, you always have to look below the surface at what are the forces, what are the mouths that need to be fed? What does the flow of money mean beyond just the legal action? And I think you can do the same thing with Letitia James. Let's remember two things when she ran as Attorney General. Number one, she explicitly campaigned as a lawyer saying, I'm going after this guy. The old definition of a dirty cop is a cop that says, I found the guy, now I need to find the crime. That's selective enforcement, that's targeting people. That's kind of what she did in this campaign, and that sets a dangerous precedent. I mean, do we really want, somebody running for Texas or Oklahoma Attorney General to say, you know what, elect me and I'm going to go after this Democrat? I don't think we want that in our country. The second thing we have to realize, though, and this is very interesting and I think has been underreported, the New York Post covered this in 2018 when she ran. But if you look at her campaign when she ran for Attorney General, she received a lot of surprising financial support from certain real estate developers in New York. Now, why is that interesting? Well, first of all, it's interesting because you would not expect her to get that kind of support. But the second thing is put that in the context of what's happening to Trump. You are quite right. There is this fine, this $500 million fine that she could dole out to political friends and allies. But guess what? She's also threatening to seize Trump's assets, his real estate assets. And what would she do with those? She would sell them, and she could actually sell them to the people that helped finance her campaign in 2018. So this could be a classic taking, as they say, where you're taking somebody's property by the force of government, and then you're going to give it and enrich your political allies. And, like Trump or not, Trump has some very choice real estate in New York that a lot of commercial real estate entities, empires, would certainly want to have as assets.
Yeah, that's like eminent domain on steroids with kickbacks and lining people's pockets. Wow, good insight there. Okay, I want some insight on your new book, Blood Money. You talk about how the elites, the powerful, are allowing China to kill America. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, well, there's really a couple components to this. The first one is just sort of looking at what's going on in America, the chaos, the social disruption, the problem we have with fentanyl, violent crime. America's on fire. I think America's on fire. China's holding an empty can of gasoline, and our political leaders are generally quiet about this. I think if you look at a lot of what's going on in the country today, you come to the conclusion and realize based on the evidence that China is fanning the flames of what's happening in this country. As I point out in the book, you look at the fentanyl crisis, it's the leading cause of death among people under the age of 45. The vast majority of people dying of fentanyl poisoning don't even know they're taking it. They think they're taking a Vicodin or an Adderall. People want to point the finger at the Mexican drug cartels, which are certainly complicit, but they're really the junior partners here. China runs every link in this chain of fentanyl, from the precursors to the creation of the fentanyl in Mexico. There's 2,000 Chinese nationals in Mexico that are actually producing this fentanyl. The pill presses that they use in Mexico to create these fake pills laced with fentanyl are pill presses that the Chinese sold to the cartels at cost. the communication devices that the cartels use to communicate are Chinese apps and devices, because the drug cartels know that China will not share those with U.S. law enforcement. Even the money laundering aspect of this. In the old days of cocaine, the drug cartels would launder their money assets in Latin American banks. They now do it in Chinese state-owned banks. So China is the senior partner, the cartels are the junior partner, and it is a weapon of war against the United States. If you look at some of the other controversial issues, the violence in the streets, China, beginning in 2018, started to smuggling the small devices called auto sear switches or Glock switches. Highly illegal in the United States. You can only get one with a federal permit, and certainly you cannot be a felon or a criminal to get one. What this small device does, if you put it in a Glock handgun, is it turns a Glock handgun into a fully automatic machine gun. They've been smuggling these, China's been smuggling these into the United States since 2018 by the thousands. And our Department of Homeland Security says these are particularly being targeted at criminal gangs and drug gangs operating in the United States. And so we see the rise of machine gun fire in the United States is up 5,000% over the last 5 years. And this is part of a Chinese plan to destabilize the United States. And there are other aspects of this as well.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I wasn't aware of any of this. This is much deeper. I mean, I study the corruption almost every day. This is all extremely new. So China then is the senior partner. Mexico is the junior partner. They don't care how many Americans are killed in the process. Is this more about raising money for China or more about just destabilizing the United States?
I think it's both. But to show you the corruption aspect of this, Joe Biden in particular does not call out China for their involvement in the fentanyl trade at all. In fact, the last time he met with President Xi, he said he raised the subject, but there's no finger pointing. We can't have any finger pointing. Here's, I think, one of the main reasons that is the case. The Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, they are the kings of fentanyl. Everybody recognizes they are the biggest player in bringing fentanyl into the United States. They were introduced and brought into the fentanyl trade by a Chinese criminal gang called UBG, United Bamboo Group, which is headed by a guy named Zhang Anlo, who also goes by the name White Wolf. White Wolf and UBG created the Sinaloa cartel as the fentanyl superpower that they are. White Wolf has a business partner who in 2017 gave the Biden family a $5 million interest-free forgivable loan that the Bidens have never repaid. And so, the question is, does Joe Biden really want to have a conversation about Chinese involvement in fentanyl? You literally have 1 degree of separation between the first family of the United States and the fentanyl trade. Of course not. He doesn't want to have this conversation. So that's the real consequence of corruption. People say, well, politicians are corrupt, they're always going to take their money. It actually has real life and death consequence. And I think that is the reason the United States, this administration, is not trying to even deal with this issue. Joe Biden simply wants this issue to go away.
Yeah, wow. How nice would that be? A $5 million, never make an interest payment, totally forgivable loan. Yeah, you would probably, if you had low morals, you would probably take that all day long. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it, except for you. You're exposing it, and we love that. I'm going to put a link down below so that people can go get that. I'm going to link it to Amazon if that's okay. Then they can see your other books. But Peter, I want to thank you so much, Peter, for coming on, helping us understand what's going on here in the United States. Would you say that of all the countries out there, they try to make Russia seem like the big bad boogeyman, but would you say that China is the single biggest threat to the United States?
Yeah, I mean, look, Russia's a threat, but Russia's a declining power. They're having a hard time with Ukraine militarily. Everybody was expecting them to win this war in 2 weeks. They haven't done that. Russia has a declining economy. They are declining power. They are isolated. China is an ascendant power. They are growing in strength. They are far more sophisticated than the Russians. So yes, both are a threat, but China to me is absolutely much more of a threat at this point than Russia is.
Okay, great. Peter Schweizer, thank you so much for coming on. I'll put those links down below. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Great conversation.